You know, this is not your worst idea.
Wow, that was almost a compliment.
Your worst idea is what you did with your ears.
Yeah, I'm doomed.
Take him to Detroit. No! No, not Detroit! No! No, please! Anything with that! No!
Well, I don't have to say much this time. Zootopia 2, also directed by the duo of Byron Howard and Rich Moore, again tackles the misadventures of Judy Hopps, voiced again by Jennifer Goodwin, and Nick Wilde, also voiced by Jason Bateman. While the sequel hit theaters 9 years after the original, Zootopia 2 takes off merely 1 week after Nick Wilde has become a cop and Judy's partner. And this time, their partnership will lead them into investigating one of the richest families of Zootopia, and their relation with the mysterious reptiles that mostly kept up to themselves far away from the city. Disney doesn't have a good track record with sequels, and to say that this movie had a huge hype would be the understatement of the decade. After all, just 1 week after it hit theaters, it amassed $500 million. As stated before, I normally don't touch Disney stuff, but I'm just closing a cycle. Now, is Zootopia 2 worth its hype? Let's find out. Visuals. This is still Disney, so right out of the gate you have improvements in the visual department to the point I'm convinced that they were just flaunting. Like, you can see how the crowds are reflected in Nick's shades at the beginning. And since this time, the focus will be more on the watery areas and the deserts, expect a ton of water effects, sand, and snow. While Judy and Nick's models were kept simple, the new additions to the cast got more complex. You have warthogs, zebras, horses with long manes, lynxes with fluffy fur, and of course Gary the Snake. If DreamWorks went simplistic for the sake of expressions and motion, Disney had the money to go for both. And you especially see it in the model of Gary the Snake. Blue scales that contrast with nearly every place he is in, fluid motion as he swoops around, and the big cartoonish yellow eyes. Considering the new mayor Wind Dancer, they were also willing to go the fully cartoonish with exaggerated chest and mane, in contrast with the more realistic cartoonish of the Lynx family. While Judy and Nick's models remain as simple, this time, since Disney has a dough, you see the pair of cop animals donning several different outfits through the movie. The distribution of locales have changed a bit. Instead of focusing on the urbane, Zootopia 2 goes for the exotic, with mountains, lodges, deserts, swamps. Color palette is mostly bichromatic, meaning you have a vast predominant color, but it's not the only one, in order to make the main characters pop up. Since this isn't much of a filter, I'd say it's efficient and well used. And of course, since this is a sequel, everything is cranked up to 11 in effects. So you have manors with lots of fireworks, parties chock full of people. Overall, it's an improvement over the original, same style but with some interesting additions. Acting. Camera-wise, there were some subtle changes. There is still the tried and true Disney camera, where most of the focus is in the two characters having a conversation, but everything is more dynamic now. A bit too dynamic for my tastes. Cuts are shorter, there is a wobbly camera around, conversation shots are shorter due to the characters moving around back and forth, and just like the previous movie, scenes are absurdly loaded with references. Be it a locale featured in The Rescuers, two old characters popping back in once and twice, to even whole sections straight up lifted from a director of way darker movies. This is where the first cracks start to appear, because this is a frantic movie with leads to pacing issues. There are more action scenes, and not only they stretch a bit too far, but the camera sometimes cranked its quirks of non-action scenes up to 11, meaning even shorter cuts and more wobble. Once more, nothing that gets to the level of Michael Bay, You can still see what's going on, and I have to commend the directing to put the emphasis on the moving characters and keep the visual clutter to a minimum on the sides. But when you compare it to the action scenes of The Bad Guys 2, it makes things downright safe and somewhat lackluster. It doesn't leave much of an impression, nor lets the action breathe by itself. And while the first Zootopia didn't have much action, it knew that it was a vehicle for the character interactions and allowed itself to be somewhat silly, which heralds the problem with the writing. Quick lesson time. Disney uses a specific cookie cutter recipe for its writing and rarely deviates from it. Their protagonists are more often than not spunky optimistic people with a mission or a dream. They find a deuteragonist who has an opposing personality for shenanigans. By the end of the second third of the movie they break up and then reunite again before taking down the villain. Now, Disney sequels. We are going through shaky ground. You see, Disney doesn't have a good history with sequels at all, because more often than not, producers are cowardly beings afraid of change, seeing their movies as gambling instead of entertainment. They want to get as much money as they can, spending as little as possible. So, either they place the safe bets and redo the same rehashed formula, or shoot down the kneecaps quality-wise to spend less. And since I already described how the visuals were a notch higher, writing-wise, Zootopia 2 made me appreciate the original more, and this isn't a good thing for this movie. Okay, just a second, I need to close my bunker. Anyway, this has the same plot of the first Zootopia, but with everything worse. Character dynamics, overall plot, etc. It's both a repetition of the first movie and some notches down in every single way. No, it's not awful, but it's a tangible downgrade. See, using the same cookie cutter recipe isn't a problem by itself, but using the same plot, with the same beats, the same twists and more, in a movie about a pair of cops trying to unravel a mystery is just asking to be predictable, which is the second worst thing a movie with any sort of mystery wants to be. The worst thing is boring. But one step at a time. Let's start with the overall plot. Right out of the gate, we start with some weird decisions. For example, setting this movie 1 week after Nick was enrolled in the police force. Assuming that Zootopia's cop program is more or less akin to the USA's, thus insanely small, we can infer that there is at least 3 or 4 months, which may be too soon for several things that we will see in this movie, such as a new mayor being elected. And turns out, Judy is having anxiety issues, trying to prove to everyone that she and Nick are good partners, which is also insanely soon for just 1 week on the field, especially after both of them saved the whole city. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Now, as predictably, since this happened in the last movie, Judy and Nick try their hand at catching some perps, fail, and then are thrown into the plot with Gary the Snake seeking to uncover the truth behind Zootopia and the Lynx family. A crime movie, or at least any movie with any kind of investigation, follows a specific logic. A crime happened, criminal A happened, which led to B and then to C, and the heroes follow the inverse path, C leading to B, then A. The first Zootopia followed this logic quite well. Otterton learned about the night house, was targeted inside the car and went crazy. So Judy seeks Otterton, leading to the car, which leads to Manchas, who gives her the hint of the night house. Here in Zootopia 2, this logic, alongside any semblance of subtlety, is thrown through the window. Judy and Nick go to spot A, seeking information about Gary. Gary just happens to be there for no specific reason, which leads them to a chase, which brings them to point D, which actually has no correlation to the plot if you think about it, and it feels more like a treasure hunt that moves through convenience and coincidences instead of unraveling a mystery. Which would be fine if the movie was made to be a treasure hunt movie akin to National Treasure. In fact, sadly, the more you think about the overall plot, the worse it gets and less sense it makes. Just one visit to the theater and I was able to notice how the villain's plan made absolutely no sense whatsoever. The several plot holes and continuity errors kept piling up to a point that by the end of the movie my brain went,
That's it, I'm getting out of here.
The themes here don't fare much better because of how much of a cluttered mess the plot is. In the first movie, even if I didn't like how Nick and Judy kept flinging barbs at each other, it was still tied to the main theme of racism and learning to push aside differences for a common goal. The biggest point to me was how racism was depicted in a surprisingly realistic way. For example, I heard in real life people going,
Stop it. You're not like them.
Oh, there's a them now.
which made me instantly hooked. Here, while you can draw a parallel between how the reptiles are being treated with how indigenous populations are treated, being killed off and thrown off their land, thanks to the hurried treasure hunt pace, the delivery is too detached to make it stick, borderline generic. There's too much going on at the same time to make anything work. It wants to focus on Judy and Nick, then on Gary, then on the Sopranos. You have family problems, the dislocations of indigenous people, a Thomas Edison wannabe who wants to expand his domain, and somehow marital problems. No, you can't convince me that what Judy and Nick go through isn't a marital crisis. Anyway, all this mess wrapped in an intense chase non-stop. Lastly, about the characters and their dynamics. Yeah, when you have a whole police department practically bullying a pair of rookies that saved the city some months ago because of a recent mess, you know that the jerk levels are still over 9,000. Bogo got a bit better between movies and he actually has some good points, but he still forces the plot to start because he is an incompetent asshole. A good point is that the new additions to the cast aren't that bad, like the beaver whose name I immediately forgot, who serves as a vehicle for cheap puns, the Lynx family and Mayor Winddancer, and of course Gary. Besides one-off jokes such as the Z-Bros or minor antagonists such as the Hogs, I don't mind any, though I predicted a lot of people will either love or hate them. I also can't help but feel that there were too many side characters mixing with old references. They could have axed Winddancer and the plot would have got a bit better. And I also have to point out that the beaver took a large amount of time that could have been used to flesh out Gary. Yes, the snake who is part of the main poster barely shows up besides doing some info dumps, which is quite sad. He does have a cheaper curious personality that would have jived well with the main duo. While the movie is about reptile racism, most of it is through info dumps and just one scene of a reptile bar being raided. Could have fleshed it out a lot more. Anyway, let's talk about the main duo. Oh boy. For those who watched my video about the first Zootopia, remember when I said how easy it was, especially for Disney, to break the balance between good protagonists? Well, it happened here, and it got ugly. In the first movie, whenever Judy and Nick stopped bickering, they actually synergized well, with Nick knowing where to go so Judy could put the pieces of the puzzle together. Judy was too stubborn and headstrong for her own good, which nearly ended sparkling a furry apartheid, while Nick was a cynic bastard that had to learn that to make things better he has to believe in people. Here in Zootopia 2, Hobbs repeatedly goes against orders not only from her chief, but her superiors. She nearly botches an arrest, nearly kills several innocents and does a ton of property damage in the first 5 minutes of this movie, all because she had a need to prove herself. After saving the city in the last movie, she doesn't just forgot the whole lessons of the first movie, she got actively worse, cranking up the snappy judgmental jerk behavior up to a literal suicidal level. Yes, she's so headstrong, she ignores danger and nearly dies at least twice. Oh, and she makes fun of Nick's phobias. And speaking of, Nick not only got 9 useless, he effectively got detrimental to the plot. He is mostly here to be a punching bag for the sake of cheap jokes, sometimes a literal punching bag, make mistakes to lead the cops to the duel so the action can continue, and of course bicker and complain every step of the way, making things slow as molasses. It seems he forgot his spine in the last movie because instead of calling out Judy on her behavior as he did before, he just mumbles some complaints and goes along with what she wants. He also has suddenly trauma with reptiles, which is never explained how it happened, and suddenly it's gone. Gone like his streetwise that was passed to the beaver, his smarts and intelligence. Which is ironic. In a movie where a lot is said about the power of partnership, the whole thing could have gone far smoother if Hobbs left him behind. So, if in the last movie both characters were borderline unlikable, without chemistry, but with a good dynamic, here they are completely unlikable with a one-sided dynamic and, to me, the worst part of the movie, besides the plot holes. Lastly, the humor also took a hit. While Zootopia was never a comedy that made me stop the movie to wipe out my tears of laughter, like Emperor's New Groove, it still had a nice selection of funny moments, ranging from cartoonish comedy, puns, and even meta jokes with a great sense of timing. Here they focus more on double entendre jokes, Nick being an universal chew toy, and some silly childish humor with jokes that stretch too far.
Hey bub.
Hey bub.
Hey bub.
Hey bub. Hey bub bub.
Hey bub. Bubby bub.
Hey bub. Hey bub. Hey ho.
Hey bub bub.
Or jokes pile up in a desperate attempt to make you laugh. I didn't mind the jokes, just not as good as the original and somewhat boring, until the bane of modern cinema reared its ugly head and made me groan out loudly in pain. Quips and awkward humor after a serious scene a la Marvel. Yes, if there is a serious, deep and intense moment, expect a joke to shoot it down. I can't help but feel that this movie would have been better as a smaller, perhaps a whodunit mystery that happens in the Lynx manner, contained and focused. But again, Disney wouldn't have the guts to change the formula, and I can't say more without going into spoilers. All I have to say is that I honestly struggled a lot to see something in the writing that outshone or was as good as the original, and sadly the best I can say is that the references were surprising and nice. There are some genuinely heartwarming moments, especially at the end, and that overall is not as bad as it could be. It's on par with the course of a Disney sequel, the same cookie cutter recipe with the same plot beats, but watered down, and what the producers think that make a movie better cranked up to 11, making it a bit worse. Soundtrack. And the same things happen here. We still have the good old Disney brand of soundtrack, but also watered down because of sequelitis. Music is nice, it follows well what's going on and changes accordingly to the zone the characters are in, and it's pretty much like the first one. But a smaller note is how the big banger of the scenario, the main theme, got a bit out of rhythm. In the first movie, Shakira's theme was tied well to the presentation of the whole city, blasting away as Judy stares at the enormous Zootopia as she's arriving by train. Now, the following theme feels as if it's just there to be there, being played in a gala party. Why would they play a show in the middle of a gala party? Anyway, voice acting gets no complaints, just like the first movie. It's still top shape. Even if I disliked some of the characters, their voice acting was top notch. It was weird to see such an enormous amount of cameos because very few people notice even half of them unless they pay attention, like Danny Trejo or Michael J. Fox. The highlight of the movie was Andy Samberg, who fit Paul Burt's like a glove and was able to navigate the characters, and of course Ke Huy Quan as Gary the Snake. I mean, dude has a joyful voice. I wish the plot did more with him. Final thoughts. Honestly, yeah, this is an immense overhyped movie. It's not bad by itself, it is still the Disney brand of quality. The visuals are improved, the places Jude and Nick visit are beautiful, but everything else is 2 or 3 notches down from the original. Kids may probably like it though. My impression is that this is one of those movies that it's well liked now. After all, it got 1 billion in revenue right now. But when the luster fades, people will start seeing the cracks and its overall fame will take some hits. It happened before, especially with Disney movies, and it will happen again. If the first movie was able to dance within the boundaries of the cookie cutter recipe, the sequel fell prey to its whims. My suggestion is that you wait for it to hit the streaming services instead of going for the theaters. You won't be losing much. Spoilers. Okay, I'll just give an overall check of the plot and highlight some of the points so this doesn't become a rant. First and all, it really miffed me how Judy somehow forgot the whole lesson she got a week before and how the movie tried to push that saving the city was not enough for Judy to pipe down. They tried to foil a heist on their own, mess up, get chewed by Bogo who at least softened up, and he downright refuses to see that the bunny has found snake scales in the crime place. As in, he doesn't even look at it, so Hobbs can be Hobbs and go forth. And this is where I have to address the biggest problem of the movie. When writing a story, everything always works as dominoes. One bad factor makes another bad, and so on. Here, the movie relies on Hobbs being right about everything no matter how reckless and awful is her behavior. Because the instant she isn't justified in her actions, everything crumbles. So, instead of the first movie where she fights an unfair system with the help of Nick, everything is structured to keep her in the right. Did she ignore orders and endanger civilians? She finds a clue. If she didn't mess things up, wouldn't the police give her the proof anyway? Gotcha! The police is completely corrupt without Bogo. For some reason. Did she never get killed trying to chase someone through the water tubes? She lands exactly where she needs to be, next to people who just happen to be passing by and know where she must go. And the biggest victim of this domino is Nick. I wasn't much of a fan of his in the first movie, but here it's just sad what they did to him. Since the movie relies on how Hobbs is always right, even when she is wrong, and she's wrong many times, the balance is thrown off. He keeps getting punched, used as a chew toy, insulted, doesn't point out how Hobbs ruined several good moments for the sake of her own insane drive, how she nearly died. He just goes along and keeps telling her to quit so they can run away. I honestly thought that this was the build-up for when the cookie recipe demanded that both heroes to part. He'd yell at her how reckless she was behaving, and when it's finally time for him to blow up, he just whimpers and cowers, even if in the first movie he was more than able enough to call her out immensely shit behavior in front of a whole crowd. The movie tries to justify this by saying that he was worried about her, but again, Nick didn't have any problem being blunter than a thunderhammer last movie.
The kind that needs to be muzzled? The kind that makes you think you need to carry around fox repellent? Yeah, don't think I didn't notice that little item the first time we met.
And to make Hobbs right, it relies on Paul Burt, the twist villain, be immensely stupid and nonsensical with his plan. Disney really needs to stop trying for the redeemable and twist villains because their strength are the bombastic evil to the bone like Frollo and Shang Yu. When they try redeemable villains, it ends like a mess like Raya and the Last Dragon, and when they try twist villains, it ends like Paulbert. I immediately noticed that Paulbert was the twist villain because he acted exactly like Bellwethers in the first movie. Both were seemingly good-willed, clumsy characters that supported Hobbs. But unlike Bellwether, who had a solid plan even if she was an insane racist, his plan is to get into the good graces of his murderous mobster family by finding the proof that Zootopia was built by Gary's grandmother and destroy it. I told you this was a treasure hunt movie. For that, he brought Gary to Zootopia, smuggled the snake into his father's party, and allowed Gary to steal the diary, so he could get Gary's trust. You know, after getting everyone's attention on Gary, and even if he could have killed Gary several times over. Honestly, saying that he's just stupid and or desperate craving for the love of his family wouldn't cut it. But let's just pretend it does. Then why he kept magically finding Judy and saved her life? When Judy goes to the swamp, how the cops did he find her so fast? How Paulbert found her if he doesn't have the same pull as his father does with the cops? All he had to do was let the cops seize Judy and be there when they do, since he magically follows them, and use his family name to go, "I'm going to return the diary to my father." And it's beyond idiotic how he saves Judy, all for the sake of keeping Paulbert as a twist villain. And also because Hobbs must be alive no matter how many mistakes she commits, and she must be right. See how the dominoes act? If he wanted to show his family he means business, helping Judy just makes things worse. Helping Gary made his plans worse. Everything he does makes his own plan worse. By the way, how the f does Paulbert have so many snake venom capsules? Does he milk Gary? Snake doesn't have 3 or 4 doses of poison in just a day. Then how did he get...
I don't know, I've gone cross-eyed.
Anyway, there are lots of cameos that sadly didn't add anything to the movie. Bellwether shows up, but her cameo just raises more questions about how the hell ZPD prison system works, and it's all washed away for the sake of a cheap gag. Like I said, I'm just raising some of the many plot holes and continuity problems that plague this movie. I don't want to devolve into a rant or go cinema scenes in it. Just to sum things up, Judy needs to be right, to be an action heroine, and at the same time realize by herself her own problems and failings. Therefore, no matter how reckless her behavior is, Nick can't call her out in it, or be right about anything, or be efficient at anything. And for Judy to be right and survive being right, the villain's plan must be simple enough that she can solve it by herself, and the villain must do a series of stupid mistakes to justify keeping her alive, while being able to magically be there whenever she needs a clue or help. Overall, this movie could have been better as a murder mystery centered on the house, because it wastes too much time with the transitions, the annoying back and forth, and the visual clutter. For example, let's just think that Gary steals the books or the lynxes kill someone with snake venom. Judy and Nick find Gary, who pleads for his innocence, but he can't move since this is a city of mammals that hate reptiles. Judy and Nick try to bring it up to Bogo only to realize that, while the water buffalo open it up to predators, there is an underlayer of racism toward the reptiles, and thus they decide to only blow the case open when they have enough evidence. There, done, and it could have followed the same recipe as the first movie. Anyway, on a less bitter note, the final scene was adorable, a bit too adorable and long. I could hear the screams of the diabetic damned through the theater walls, but it was still adorable in a way only Disney does. Well, this is all for today. See you all next time.